Now, we talked about the NBA stuff, and I think it's a well-deserved shout and pretty crazy to think, right? I think it was Sunday. Jalen Williams had his career high 41 points against the Spurs. And then a day or two later, we got another 50 ball from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That's 4 50-point games. And it's funny because I remember it was a tweet, there's the toxic fan bases and the funny music counts, and all of them kind of go back and forth on Twitter all the time. But the big thing was, the quote unquote free throw merchant he can do all this, but he can't get 50 points. I think it's 4 50-point games in the last 19 games for Shai. So not only did he get his first 50-point game, he got 3 more in a span of less than 20 games. And again, just these MVP moments that we're talking about, for Shai as he and the Thunder kind of round into playoff form. They have such a healthy lead at the top of the Western Conference standings. I mean, what can we say about him? What does this mean for the Thunder? Like, it is them and everybody else in the West. And with a guy like that at the head of the snake, they're going to be really hard to deal with come April.
Man, like I'm really starting to get to the point where I think that Shai is the most unguardable player in the NBA. And like Jokic he's the hardest to game plan for, I would think.
Yeah.
Like you would think that he is the hardest to game plan for. He's obviously still unguardable. He's just so massive. Like he scores so easily and he's so skilled, and you have to worry so much about his passing ability that it makes him even harder to stop as a scorer. Yeah. But like Shai on an island right now, good luck, man. Like I know people, like you said, the whole free throw merchant thing, like that has to play into the fact that he is just like so in control of his own body, and the stop go herky jerky, like, like that, his like e-break kind of like snatchback is the most unstoppable move in the league right now. Like he gets people left and right on that. He sent Aaron Holiday almost into the first row of the stands the other night that he had 50 on one of those e-break snatchbacks. And like, I continue to say it. Like, I don't think that the casual fan who's not watching the Thunder on League Pass and only catches them when they're on national TV, like they aren't fully aware of just like how unstoppable he truly is. Like the guy leads the NBA. Nobody else in the NBA even has more than one 50-point game besides Shai this year. Leads the NBA in 40-point games, leads the NBA in 30-point games, leads the NBA in 20-point games. He has more than 300 total points than the next closest player. Like what he is doing this season is insane. And I was actually looking the other day because, one of my coworkers is a Nuggets fan, and there was a little bit of a back and forth in the Slack chat on like who the MVP really is. And it's like, Jokic, obviously insane season. He's averaging a triple double. The on-off numbers are what everybody points to because it's so drastic. Like when he's on the court, the Nuggets are one of the best teams in the league. When he's off the court, they would have like the worst net rating in the entire NBA for a team. Now for Shai, like his on-court net rating is actually higher than Jokic's. So like, yes, when you take him off the court, the numbers aren't exactly comparable because Shai's team around him is better than Jokic's team around him. But like when Shai is on the floor, he has the Thunder playing at a higher level, numbers wise than Jokic does when he's on the floor for the Nuggets. And not for nothing, second best record in the league. So like, maybe it is voter fatigue. Like again, the guy is averaging like almost a 30-point triple double, and Jokic has been incredible. And if he were to win the MVP, I would totally understand it. You and I both sat on this podcast last year, and we're pretty firm in our stance that we thought that Shai should have been MVP last year. I really hope he gets it this year. I really do, because I feel like it's deserved. It's not that Jokic doesn't deserve it. I just think that Shai should be rewarded for one of the most dominant scoring seasons that we've seen in a little bit of time here.
No, that's incredible. Like to look at the fact that Shai's averaging 32.6 points per game, and everybody knows, like it's not a surprise. It's not a secret anymore, right? That the Thunder are going to play through him, and Shai's going to try to get to his spots, and he's not necessarily going to let you speed him up in doing that. And he's going to be methodical about it. And again, I mentioned it before, and I need to go back and find exactly who it was that said it, but it was an elite perimeter defender that explained why Shai is so difficult to guard. And he was like, man, Shai just sets up the trap for you as a defender. And now you are in a position where he is in the spot that he wants to get to. And all you can do is either let him finish and score, or you foul him. And that's kind of goes back to the skill of like him getting to the free throw line. It's not that he's like just getting these cheap fouls or anything like that. he is just manipulating the defense to put them in these spots to where they are dead to rights. Like they have nothing that they could do, but Shai's going to get his. And that 50-point game against the Rockets, super efficient. I think it was 16 of 30 from the field, 10 of 10 from the free throw line, hit 5 threes as well. And the thing that's most impressive, and you and I have been following Shai closely since we learned about him, or we knew of him as a prospect when he was at Kentucky, when he goes to the Clippers, and we saw a few things in him, and it always stands out to me, even before Danny Green went on the podcast and talked about it. But I remember it was Shai's first game back at home in Toronto, Clippers, Raptors, and he was going full speed, stopped at a dime, behind the back crossover. Danny Green kept going, and Shai just calmed down right into a spot, right at the elbow, and cashed it. And I remember, like, throwback, show old, we were live blogging this Raptors game, and I was like, man, this dude might be pretty good. And him being that part, I don't think Sam Presti thought Shai was going to be this good when he was the biggest piece that made the Paul George deal go through. And I don't think any of us thought that he was going to be that good. I think Shai did. I think he actually believed that he was going to be that good. But thinking about this late lottery pick who, was a solid scorer that showed some flashes for a scrappy 8-seed Clippers team. And I think that experience had a huge part in him being the player that he is, learning how to be a pro, playing under Doc and spending that year there and seeing the business up close, seeing all the things that happened that year to now where he is at the player that he is, 6 years later, right? That seems like forever ago, but that was 6 years ago. So I think that the possibilities are endless, and it's really exciting for him to potentially win MVP this year, follow the footsteps of Steve Nash. It's been 20 years since his first one, so I guess it'd be a little poetic that Steve Nash won his back-to-back, 04-05 and 05-06. So, we're right almost at the finish line, but Shai definitely has a pretty nice lead as far as it goes.
Yeah, I go back to that interview from last year where he was just like, my whole life is consistent.
Yeah.
And like people kind of like on the internet took that. Yeah. And the whole team behind him was like, oh, J-Dub's going crazy and, they're throwing the towels on him. But it's like, I just think that's valid. Like this is a guy who shows up every single night. He plays every single night. He's not a star who takes games off. Like, he's sleepwalking his way to 30 points and he gets his points the same way. Like you said, his mid-range is absolutely knocked down. He gets to the free throw line. He finishes around the rim. This year, he's shooting the three with more confidence than I've seen him shoot the three in his entire career. And I think anybody would be lying to you if they said they knew that Shai would end up being this good. But the blueprint was there, like as you saw him year over year, starting to progress more and more and more. I think it honestly goes back to that Thunder season where, they traded Paul George and everybody kind of expected them to be in no man's land. And it was like him, Dennis Schroeder, and Chris Paul that still got that team to the playoffs, took the Rockets to Game 7 when they had Russ and James Harden. And that was kind of when you're like, all right, this Shai kid could really kind of be somebody. Like, you could start to see it. But even then, and that's only 5 years ago, even then, right. Like if you had told me that he'd be MVP candidate, like arguably the best player in the league, second best player in the league, like wherever you have him, if you can't have him lower than like 3, in my opinion, like right now for top players in the league. And like, it's just stories like that don't happen all the time in the NBA. Like obviously Jokic is unprecedented right now, like drafted during a Taco Bell commercial in the second round. Like, Giannis is an unprecedented story as well. Like there's a lot of them in the NBA today, but like for somebody like Shai, who went to a school as big as Kentucky, had a solid freshman college season, but no one would have expected him to be a one and done, gets drafted like just inside the lottery and then turn into something like this. It's not a story that we're seeing all the time, and it's really cool to see it develop. He's one of my favorite players to watch, if you couldn't tell. And I'm really curious to see how far he can take the Thunder this year, because it would be awesome to see them make an NBA Finals run.
Yeah, one last thought before we go to break. I read a really awesome piece from Thunder beat writer Joel Lorenzi, and I would implore all of you who have not read it to read it, but it was about Shai going into All-Star Weekend and like my whole life is consistent thing. After they lost in the playoffs last year, Shai was working out with Nate Mitchell, who used to be in Charlotte, one of the Canadian national team staff members, and he was going through workouts in his full Thunder uniform. Like, he doesn't like to publicize the work and stuff that he's doing, and it sounds like kind of corny as you talk about it, but like it was him and his version of visualizing the things that did not go right for him and the Thunder during last year's playoff run. And the best way to be it or is to see it, right? And like to be in everything, like full all the way down to I'm wearing, my uniform and going through all the reps and doing things like that and doing it at the same time every day. And ultimately, like when you watch him and you listen to him talk, like it's not an act. Like he's very smooth, he's very suave, like very much in control. And like he goes about life the same way he plays a game. Like you're not going to speed him up with a trick question or anything like that in the media. He seems like he just wants to hoop and like hang out with his wife and his kid and his family and just keep going. And it's just really cool to see, like you said, unprecedented story, the journey that none of us could have predicted. And it could very well end up with him winning MVP this season. And I'm sure Thunder fans are hoping that it ends with them winning a championship, which is something we will see how that goes.